The Filipinos are a Southeast Asian ethnic group, who are identified and native to the Philippines, who share a common Filipino culture and ancestry. According to the 2010 census, there were 92,337,852 in the Philippines and about 10 million living outside the Philippines, but the domestic population was believed to have topped 100 million in July 2014. Usage of the term Filipino started during the Spanish colonial period, and the original definition was a person of Spanish descent born in the Philippines. A person not of Spanish descent was called an Indio, Chino, or Moro. There are around 180 languages and dialects spoken in the Philippines by their respective Filipino ethno-linguistic groups or simply ethnic groups, the vast majority of them belonging to the Austronesian language family, with Tagalog and Cebuano having the greatest number of native speakers. The official languages of the Philippines are Filipino and English, and most Filipinos are bilingual or trilingual. Filipinos are made up of more than 175 ethnic groups around the Philippines and are a mosaic of influences throughout hundreds of years of history, shared with neighbors and faraway colonizers. The Filipino identity, with its Austronesian roots, was developed with Chinese, Indian, Japanese, Spanish and American influences. The Philippines was a Spanish colony for 333 years, setting a foundation for contemporary Filipino culture. Under Spanish rule, most of the Filipino populace embraced Roman Catholicism, yet revolted many times to its hierarchy. Due to a colonial program, almost all inhabitants adopted Spanish surnames from the Catalogo Alfabético de Apellidos published in 1849 by the Spanish colonial government. As neither past governments nor the modern Philippine Statistics Authority account for the racial background of an individual, the exact percentage of Filipinos with Spanish ancestry is unknown. Names. The name Filipino was derived from the term Las Islas Filipinas, the name given to the archipelago in 1543 by the Spanish explorer and Dominican priest Fray López de Villalobos, in honor of Philip II of Spain. The lack of the letter F in the pre-1987 Philippine alphabet, abacada, had caused the letter F to be substituted with P. Upon official adoption of the modern, 28-letter Filipino alphabet in 1987, the name Filipino was preferred over Pilipino. A number of Filipinos refer to themselves colloquially as Pinoy, which is a slang word formed by taking the last four letters of Filipino and adding the diminutive suffix y. The term, though in popular usage, is still considered by most Filipinos as a racial slur and derogatory. It dates to the early 20th century when American soldiers mockingly called Filipinos as Pinoys. Other collective endonyms for the Filipino people include Patria Adorada, as popularized by José Rizal through his poem Mi Ultimo Adios, Bayang Pilipino, or the more poetic Sambayanang Pilipino. History. Prehistory. In 2010, a metatarsal from Callao Man, discovered in 2007, was dated through uranium series dating as being 67,000 years old. Prior to that, the earliest human remains found in the Philippines were thought to be the fossilized fragments of a skull and jawbone, discovered in the 1960s by Dr. Robert B. Fox, an anthropologist from the National Museum. Anthropologists who examined these remains agreed that they belonged to modern human beings. These include the Homo sapiens, as distinguished from the mid-Pleistocene Homo erectus species. The Taban Man fossils are considered to have come from a third group of inhabitants, who worked the cave between 22,000 and 20,000 BCE. An earlier cave level lies so far below the level containing cooking fire assemblages that it must represent Upper Pleistocene dates like 45 or 50,000 years ago. Researchers say this indicates that the human remains were pre-Mongoloid, from about 40,000 years ago. Mongoloid is the term which anthropologists applied to the ethnic group which migrated to Southeast Asia during the Holocene period and evolved into the Austronesian people. Genetic marker fluctuations in ancient shorelines between 150,000 BP and 17,000 BP connected the Malay archipelago region with maritime Southeast Asia and the Philippines. This may have enabled ancient migrations into the Philippines from maritime Southeast Asia approximately 50,000 BP to 13,000 BP. A January 2009 study of language phylogenies by R. D. Gray at the University of California, Los Angeles, published in the journal Science, suggests that the population expansion of Austronesian peoples was triggered by rising sea levels of this undershelf at the end of the last ice age. This was a two-pronged expansion, which moved north through the Philippines and into Taiwan, while a second expansion prong spread east along the New Guinea coast and into Oceania and Polynesia. The Negritos are likely descendants of the indigenous populations of the Sunda landmass and New Guinea, predating the Mongoloid peoples who later entered Southeast Asia. Multiple studies also show that Negritos from Southeast Asia to New Guinea share a closer cranial affinity with Australo-Melanesians. They were the ancestors of such tribes of the Philippines as the Aeta, Agta, Ita, Ati, Dumagat and other similar groups. Today they comprise just 0.03% of the total Philippine population. The majority of present-day Filipinos are a product of the long process of evolution and movement of people. After the mass migrations through land bridges, migrations continued by boat during the maritime era of Southeast Asia. The ancient races became homogenized into the Malayo-Polynesians which colonized the majority of the Philippine, Malaysian and Indonesian archipelagos. Pre-colonial period. Since at least the 3rd century, various ethnic groups established several communities. These were formed by the assimilation of various native Philippine kingdoms. South Asian and East Asian people together with the people of the Indonesian archipelago and the Malay Peninsula, traded with Filipinos and introduced Hinduism and Buddhism to the native tribes of the Philippines. Most of these people stayed in the Philippines where they were slowly absorbed into local societies. Many of the barangay were, to a varying extent, under the de jure jurisprudence of one of several neighboring empires. Among them the Malay Srivijaya, Javanese Majapahit, Brunei, Malacca, Indian Chola, Kampa, and Khmer empires, although de facto had established their own independent system of rule. Trading links with Sumatra, Borneo, Java, Malay Peninsula, Indochina, China, India, Arabia, and Japan. A thalassocracy had thus emerged based on international trade. Even scattered barangays, through the development of inter-island and international trade, became more culturally homogeneous by the 4th century. Hindu-Buddhist culture and religion flourished among the noblemen in this era. In the period between the 7th to the beginning of the 15th centuries, numerous prosperous centers of trade had emerged, including the Kingdom of Namayan which flourished alongside Manila Bay, Cebu, Iloilo, Buchin, the Kingdom of San Fonso situated in Pangasinan, the Kingdom of Luzon now known as Pampanga which specialized in trade with most of what is now known as Southeast Asia, and with China, Japan and the Kingdom of Ryukyu in Okinawa. From the 9th century onwards, a large number of Arab traders from the Middle East settled in the Malay archipelago and intermarried with the local Malay, Bruneian, Malaysian, Indonesian, and Luzon and Visayas indigenous populations. In the years leading up to 1000 CE there were already several maritime societies existing in the islands, but there was no unifying political state encompassing the entire Philippine archipelago. Instead, the region was dotted by numerous semi-autonomous barangays under the sovereignty of competing thalassocracies ruled by datus, rajas or sultans, or by upland agricultural societies ruled by petty plutocrats. States such as the Kingdom of Manila and Namayan, the Dynasty of Tondo, the Confederation of Madras, the Rajanates of Buchan and Cebu and the Sultanates of Maguindanao and Sulu existed alongside the highland societies of the Ifugao and Mangian. Some of these regions were part of the Malayan empires of Srivijaya, Majapahit and Brunei. By the 15th century, Arab and Indian missionaries and traders from Malaysia and Indonesia brought Islam to the Philippines, where it both replaced and was practiced together with indigenous religions. Before that, indigenous tribes of the Philippines practiced a mixture of animism, Hinduism and Buddhism. Native villages, called barangays, were populated by locals called Timawar and Alipin. They were ruled by Rajas, Datus and Sultans, a class called Majanor, and defended by the Maharlika. These royals and nobles are descended from native Filipinos with varying degrees of Indo-Aryan and Dravidian, which is evident in today's DNA analysis among Southeast Asian royals. This tradition continued among the Spanish and Portuguese traders who also intermarried with the local populations. European settlement and rule. The arrival of Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan in 1521 began a period of European colonization. During the period of Spanish colonialism, the Philippines was part of the Viceroyalty of New Spain, which was governed and controlled from Mexico City. Early Spanish settlers were mostly explorers, soldiers, government officials and religious missionaries born in Spain and Mexico. Most Spaniards who settled were of Andalusian ancestry, but there were also Catalan, Moorish and Basque settlers. The peninsulars, mostly of Castilian ancestry, settled in the islands to govern their territory. Most settlers married the daughters of Rajas, Datus and Sultans to reinforce the colonization of the islands. The Jinor and Maharlika castes in the Philippines prior to the arrival of the Spanish formed the privileged principality during the Spanish period. In the 16th and 17th centuries, thousands of Japanese traders also migrated to the Philippines and assimilated into the local population. As a part of the 7 Years' War, British forces occupied Manila between 1762 and 1764. However, the only part of the Philippines which the British held was the Spanish colonial capital of Manila and the principal naval port of Cavite, both of which are located on Manila Bay. The war was ended by the Treaty of Paris. Consequently, no specific provision was made for the Philippines. Instead, they fell under the general provision that all other lands not otherwise provided for be returned to the Spanish Empire. Many Indian sepoy troops and their British captains mutinied and were left in Manila and some parts of the Ilocos and Cagayan. The ones in Manila settled at Cainta, Rizal, and the ones at the north settled at Isabela. Most were assimilated into the local population. The arrival of the Spaniards to the Philippines attracted new waves of immigrants from China, and maritime trade flourished during the Spanish period. The Spanish recruited thousands of Chinese migrant workers called Sanglis to build the colonial infrastructure in the islands. Many Chinese immigrants converted to Christianity, intermarried with the locals, and adopted Hispanized names and customs and became assimilated. Although the children of unions between Filipinos and Chinese that became assimilated continued to be designated in official records as Mestizos de Sangli. The Chinese Mestizos were largely confined to the Binondo area until the 19th century. However, they eventually spread all over the islands, and became traders, landowners, and moneylenders. A total of 110 Manila-Acapulco galleons set sail between 1565 to 1815, during the Philippines' trade with Mexico. Until 1593, 3 or more ships would set sail annually from each port, bringing with them the riches of the archipelago to Spain. European Criollos, Mestizos and Portuguese, French and Mexican descent from the Americas, mostly from Latin America, came in contact with the Filipinos. Japanese, Indian and Cambodian Christians who fled from religious persecutions and killing fields also settled in the Philippines during the 17th until the 19th centuries. With the inauguration of the Suez Canal in 1867, Spain opened the Philippines for international trade. European investors such as British, Dutch, German, Portuguese, Russian, Italian and French were among those who settled in the islands as business increased. More Spaniards arrived during the next century. Many of these European migrants intermarried with local Mestizos and some assimilated with the indigenous population. Late modern. After the defeat of Spain during the Spanish-American War in 1898, Filipino General Emilio Aguinaldo declared independence on the 12th of June, while General Wesley Merritt became the first American governor of the Philippines. On 10 December 1898, the Treaty of Paris formally ended the war, with Spain ceding the Philippines and other colonies to the United States in exchange for $20 million. After the Philippine-American War, the United States civil governance was established in 1901, with William Howard Taft as the first American Governor-General. A number of Americans settled in the islands and thousands of interracial marriages between Americans and Filipinos have taken place since then. Due to the strategic location of the Philippines, as many as 21 bases and 100,000 military personnel were stationed there since the United States first colonized the islands in 1898. These bases were decommissioned in 1992 after the end of the Cold War, but left behind thousands of Amerasian children. The country gained independence from the United States in 1946. The Pearl S. Buck International Foundation estimates there are 52,000 Amerasians scattered throughout the Philippines. In addition, numerous Filipino men enlisted in the U.S. Navy and made careers in it, often settling with their families in the United States. Some of their second or third generation families returned to the country. Following its independence, the Philippines has seen both small and large-scale immigration into the country, mostly involving American, European, Chinese and Japanese peoples. After World War II, South Asians continued to migrate into the islands, most of which assimilated and avoided the local social stigma instilled by the early Spaniards against him by keeping a low profile or by trying to pass as Spanish mestizos. This was also true for the Arab and Chinese immigrants, many of whom are also post-World War II arrivals. More recent migrations into the country by Koreans, Persians, Brazilians, and other Southeast Asians have contributed to the enrichment of the country's ethnic landscape, language and culture. Centuries of migration, diaspora, assimilation, and cultural diversity made most Filipinos accepting of interracial marriage and multiculturalism. Philippine nationality law is currently based upon the principle of jus sanguinis im, therefore, descent from a parent who is a citizen of the Republic of the Philippines is the primary method of acquiring national citizenship. Birth in the Philippines to foreign parents does not in itself confer Philippine citizenship, although RA 9139, the Administrative Naturalization Law of 2000, does provide a path for administrative naturalization of certain aliens born in the Philippines. Filipinos of mixed ethnic origins are still referred to today as mestizos. However, in common parlance, mestizos are only used to refer to Filipinos mixed with Spanish or any other European ancestry. Filipinos mixed with any other foreign ethnicities are named depending on the non-Filipino part.